There's a number of conversations that's taking place at the state level, the local level, and the national level on security task force and how to identify these extreme threats, how to respond and be prepared to identify physical interaction that presents itself at a polling place or at the vote center or at the central count station, which is what we saw in the 2020 election after election day on election night itself. And so we're having conversations about what security looks like at our central count location. And the mayor is right that there has to be a concerted effort by both parties to tone down the rhetoric. We have to return to civility. And what we like to say as election administrators is the election judges and the people that are working the polling locations and at central count, they're our neighbors. They're our friends. They're not strangers. They're not someone from some other area that's coming in proposing to do something nefarious to the elections process. We're simply providing access to the polling locations, and we're counting the ballots as they're being cast. We're not putting our finger on the scale. We're well past those allegations or assertions that somehow the machines are being hacked and somehow votes are being flipped and that somehow paper ballots are being destroyed. That's not what election administrators do. We have poll watcher systems now that allow folks to come into the polling place and to actually observe what's going on. The state of Texas has implemented a poll watchers training program that lays out the criteria and what the responsibilities are of a poll watcher, and there's only so much that a poll watcher can actually do at a polling location. And the key term there is watch. They don't get to interact with a voter. They interact with the election judge, with the polling place captain, and if they see something that they don't particularly understand, then the captain can explain what it is that they're seeing. And so we're being diligent. We're working with our county attorney and with the county administrator to identify the security measures that we can put in place with being certain not to demonstrate so much law enforcement or security at any particular polling place that people don't want to show up, that they're afraid to show up, or that they feel that they can't go there because there's going to be some level of intimidation. So it's a delicate balance, but I think the mayor is right. We have to address the tone. And hopefully that gets us back to a level of civility so that these threats sort of disappear.
That's great, and I really hope these efforts obviously pay off in the general election, and I think we've seen that they already have with some of the primaries. I think, kind of talking about you were discussing with the vote centers, we also know obviously that elections don't end on election day. There's post-election processes, certification, canvassing, all of those things. I think during the last election cycle, we saw some delays in counting ballots, which kind of lowered voter confidence because we're used to, generally election results being reported by the close of polls and then trickling in after. Can any of you discuss kind of how you think the best efforts that we can target at keeping voter confidence up during that post-election process, especially if there are any delays in election results?
So there's a couple of things we can do in that regard, and as I think, as we talk about our mayors and our mayors that and the influence that they have and the ability to communicate to their constituents about what the elections process is, it really comes back to an educational piece. Here's what actually happens on election day. Here's what happens during early voting, and here's how ballots are cast. Here's how ballots are counted. And we've become such a society of instant gratification that somehow there's this idea that when the polling place closes at 7 p.m., if there's no one standing in line, we should have results by 9 p.m. Well, it really just doesn't work that way because the judges have to drive the equipment back and the voting results back to the central count location. We then take steps to ensure that we've received all the data that we're supposed to get back from those locations, and then we start reading. And for Harris County, we have 782 polling locations on election day. So if I'm reading one memory stick from each of those 782 locations, and it takes me 1 minute per stick, that's 782 minutes. Now, I get to read 3 sticks at one time, but that's 3 into 782 per 1 minute. I'm still looking at 3 to 4, maybe 5 hours to tabulate votes. And that's just an educational process that that the election administrator needs to communicate to our constituents. Here's the process. There's nothing nefarious here. There's just a time gap that takes place. So we have to be more transparent about what that looks like. So we're inviting the media in, we're invited our elected officials in, so that they can speak confidently about the process and educate their constituents and educate their parties, so that we kind of, again, dial down the temperature on why are we not seeing results within 2 hours of the polls closing.